Vincent stared at the two black boxes in his hand. Two. Where had the second come from? They didn't have any records of his species, not even unlabeled reports from the scouts of the hierarchy. Yet there was a human hand clutching a memory box like the one in his skull, and that was another contraption they didn't understand. This raised so many questions he didn't have answers to. There wasn't anything else on his mind. After calling in the Yervesh patrol, he let them clear out the room, feigning disinterest as always. He caught a lift back up to his apartment, citing a desire to sync his memories which they respected, and he stood in his apartment now, slowly breathing as he stared at the two black boxes in his hand. The one he had pulled out of his skull still had some of his flesh stuck to it, while the other looked completely clean. He wanted to find out what was on that recording, but there were two problems. First, he wasn't sure if what was on his would reveal more about it, and second, he knew that by syncing he'd upload those memories with it. The connection they'd set up between his apartment and the worm ship his bodies were in was apparently pretty massive. He had no idea what sort of data transfer was required for full memories, but he was told it strained their system. Then again, he had no idea how efficient Xeno data transfers were in the first place. He knew they had to take the system down for maintenance every night. He'd never tried to use the system while it was down, and he wasn't sure how he could explain it. For now, he didn't need the hierarchy to know about it. Thinking it over, he slowly flipped the two boxes around in his palm before getting up. He walked from the kitchen into his bedroom. He'd very vigorously scanned and tested for cameras and other equipment in his apartment, using some gear he had misplaced after arrests to see if they were spying on him. As far as he could tell, they only watched the armory which he could understand. After all, he was an unknown species that kept coming back from the dead, who wouldn't want to make sure he didn't load up to kill unless they'd already told him to do it. He looked around his room for a moment. The walls were pretty barren. He didn't know what to decorate them with. It wasn't like he had pictures of family or friends or places he used to live, plus Xeno art didn't look right to him. It wasn't even like modern art. Despite looking random and bizarre, there was something human about modern art. But Xeno stuff, it was just off. So he had his waterbed, shelves with a few books he'd purchased, his closet, dresser, and that was it. No, he had his synth box and the wood box with the golden sphere. But those were terrible hiding places. The vents. He looked around and fixed his eyes on the two vents in his room. One was down along the floor, while the other was in the ceiling in the opposite corner. Walking back out into the main room of his apartment, he took a chair from the kitchen and brought it into his room. Standing on it, he pushed the ceiling vent up, testing it as he found it was just held in place by some light magnets. All the better for him. There was a small lip around the edge of the vent, but he reached up and deeper into the vent, feeling it out. As he stretched his arm, he felt a corner in the vent with another flat section. So he carefully placed the black box onto that flat section and pulled his arm back out, letting the vent cover click back into place. Moving his chair back into the kitchen, he then thought out what he needed to do. There was no way he could stop them from viewing some of his memories, but he knew they didn't pay much attention to them if nothing strange had happened. They'd watch the one where he entered the Black Blood Lab and died, but if he could avoid doing anything in between now and his next upload, they wouldn't watch it. He was always on rotation, though. Even the call that got him into this mess was on a day he'd been expecting to just trip on synth. How the fuck could he get out of it? He began to chew on his lip, but realized they were likely waiting for him to upload. He walked to his bed, moving up around the head as he stuck the black box into a special slot they'd built into the frame. The waterbed part was his idea. He'd had to explain it to them, and they thought it was insane because there was no way he'd go the night without getting sick from all the motion. But he'd proved them wrong. Then he crawled onto the bed, feeling the water bob and sway under him. Grabbing the cable from the head of the bed, he moved it to the base of his skull, feeling the little pincers grab hold. Then he winced as the needle inside pierced his flesh. From there, he just curled up into a ball. No matter how often he'd done it, he always hated uploading new memories like this. It always felt like the bony hand of death was reaching up to drag him into the abyss, and his body felt cold, so cold. So he curled up, shivering and whimpering as he closed his eyes, and then finally he woke up. The day before. Here he started to scroll ahead, knowing how to forge ahead through his own memories. Breakfast, calisthenics, gym time. Since he kept dying, he really didn't need to worry about losing muscle tone or getting out of shape, but it gave him something to do, to help focus him for the day ahead. There was the synth box. He started to trip. He played around with the gold sphere. For a moment he was content, if not happy. Then the call. The trip down to that shithole, breaking in. The fight, getting stabbed through the chest. He groaned and clutched at his heart outside of his relived memory. Then he dragged that fucker back out to the other room and died. As that happened, he gasped and sat up in the bed panting for breath, yanking the cable off his head. Nothing out of the ordinary about that day then. He was still cold, though. And wet. He looked down and cursed. It seemed he'd pissed himself as he died in the memory. He'd forgotten to go to the bathroom before sinking. Rookie mistake. He sighed and shook his head as he got off the bed, pulling off the sheets, bundling them up as he quickly walked them all out to his bathroom. They didn't like making multiple water lines, so his laundry was right next to his bathroom, which in this case helped. So he peeled off his now soiled pants and underwear, tossing them into the washing machine with his sheets. Setting the machine on, he then quickly stepped into the bathroom to turn on the shower. He didn't wait as he climbed in, shuddering as the cold water rained down on him. He'd had to force them to pressurize his line. Most soft-skinned Xenos apparently didn't like their water to be pressurized, since it hurt their flesh. He wasn't like most soft skins, though. He liked it at levels some hard-shelled species used, which surprised the Yervesh. To be honest, it hurt him just a little every time he used the shower, but after getting them to crank it up in the first place, he didn't want to deal with fine-tuning it, and a little pain was good. It helped focus him. The water began to heat up as he stood in the shower. Quickly washing up, he was done before it got hot. Usually after a death memory, he would relax and try to unwind his brain in a hot shower, but he had things he needed to do. Shutting off the water, he grabbed a towel, which thank God was the same for Xenos as it was humans. He dried off, and then pulled on a fresh set of clothes as he tried to plan out what to do next. How could he keep this day as boring and uninteresting as possible? He thought it over, and then walked out into his main living room, activating the screen and calling his handler. "Hello, Special Operations Handler Cavizor." "How many times must I tell you to call me?" The Yervesh paused. "Did you call me by my title?" "I did." "What do you want, Creature 88? Cav was smart. He'd been a commando for years, and in intelligence for a little before they'd discovered Vincent. He was aware that Cav hated the assignment, but he'd been on the team that found the wayward human in the worm lab, and they wanted someone smart to watch the unknown species. Vincent had to play this carefully. "I'd like to ask what I need to do to see a counselor." Cav snorted and laughed before pausing. "You're serious? What do you need to see a counselor over? Have some terminal illness? Are you stressed out by your job?" He snorted again. "I am stressed out by my job. Do you know how many times I've died?" 104. Vincent paused at that. "Christ, really? 104? He was taken aback for a moment as he thought it over. Maybe he needed this more than he thought. "I didn't know it was in the triple digits already." "You've been here almost 1 full year. You die approximately once every 3 days. Cav didn't sound too concerned with that statistic. "Well, this is what I'm talking about. I just pissed myself on my bed as I lived through dying again. Did you know that?" The Yervesh made a face that Vincent had come to understand was disgust. "You pissed yourself? When I sync up, it isn't like you. I don't just see and hear things, I relive them. I got stabbed in the fucking chest yesterday. I had another creature's arm through my chest. Do you think that feels good? Can you imagine the pain? I don't need to imagine it. I live it. Twice! And then I died. How many times have I committed suicide? On purpose or accident?" "On purpose!" His handler looked off screen for a moment. 4 times. Each seemed to be you testing the limits of your reincarnation early on. You haven't in the last 87 deaths. How long do you think it would take before you or another Yuresh or any other species in the hierarchy were constantly killing themselves trying to stay dead? Instead, I die serving your cause and protecting this city once every 3 days. He held up his fingers. 3! And every time I die twice. Once when it first happens, and then again when I have to sync up. Aren't you the least bit curious why I'm not fucking insane? He fumed for a moment and then sighed, closing his eyes and pinching the bridge of his nose. To be fair, Creature 88, I already think you're insane. But I'm still helping you. What's my rating level with the hierarchy? How valuable do the statistics say I am? How do I look to the analysis bureau, huh? Cav paused. I keep getting reports about how much worth you bring to the hierarchy. Besides dying for our patrols, you've got a knack for solving crimes I've never seen before. It's like you can think like the criminals you track. It is unnerving to me. But the analysis bureau wishes there were 100 of you. There are, apparently. At least 105. Not what I meant. You call me Creature 88. You have no records on my species, and yet here I am. Alone. I have no friends or things to do besides work and die. It's exhausting, Special Operations Cavazor. Please, just let me see a counselor. I need to talk to someone. Anyone. You said it yourself that I've saved some of your patrols. How many Yurvesh patrolmen are alive because I died for them? Isn't that worth something? The Yurvesh thought it over for a moment. You're a classified species for a reason. Much of your anatomy and physiology is perplexing, not to mention the combat drug you create, besides your work, of course. Aren't there counselors for classified commando work? There's got to be someone. Please. Vincent looked up at the Yurvesh. Cav thought it over for a good 30 seconds before sighing out and finally speaking again. All right. I will find you a counselor with clearance and strike this day from the memory banks. Vincent frowned. What? What do you mean? You guys can do that? Your memories require massive amounts of data to store, but it's still data. I'll let my superiors know you're seeing a counselor today and block it off. But why? I thought you guys watch everything. He knew they didn't, but it helped to feign stupid at times. We don't watch boring days, just ones with incidents. But policy and regulations state visits to counselors must be entirely private. This generally isn't an issue, but you do upload your memories to us, so it's different. I'm sure they'll allow you a day here or there. This was better than Vincent had expected. Thank you, Special Operations Handler Cavazor. I really appreciate this. I will permit you to call me Cavazor, or simply Handler if you are in an unsecure location. Cav. Do not push it, Creature 88. Fine, that's fine. Thank you, Cavazor. The screen went black and he sighed out with relief. Then he quickly moved to grab his Phoenix jacket, badge, and a tie-bar cannon to holster before heading out the door. He moved with quick, purposeful strides, checking his newest watch for a moment. Who would be on rotation soon? Who owed him favors? He quickly caught a lift heading up to Sector 2, noticing the looks he got from the various upstanding and wealthy Xenos wearing whatever the hell was the latest fashion as he made his way to the City Patrol Station HQ, which made him suddenly wonder why the hierarchy was crap about naming things. There was guards stationed outside, but they didn't even bother to check his ID. He was a classified species, and the rumor about the Shade had spread through the ranks months ago. So he entered the HQ without being stopped, walking through the fucking drab beige taupe, whatever hallways. There were various Xenos complaining about this or that to the main office, but he passed through into the heart of the station. Soon he was in the second reserved for higher-level detectives, scanning the nameplates until he found the Yurvesh he was looking for. He pushed the door open and saw the Yurvesh inside look up with some surprise. The Shade? Don't you know how to knock? Vincent stepped inside and closed the door behind him, leaning over the detective's desk as he watched the Yurvesh lean back, clearly worried. He had noticed that when he acted aggressively, and with confidence most of the time, Xenos would quickly switch to the defensive, assuming he was somehow in charge. Detective Harmikad, I know about your secret. He saw that bony, kabuki-like face display pure surprise. What? But how have you not been busted for it? Because my observers don't know. They see my memories, but just sights and sounds, not thoughts. I made the connection a month ago after that failed illegal brothel raid. The detective gulped. So, you're here to expose me? No. But, your memories, don't worry about that. At some point soon, I will call you. I'll mention a CI with the codename Scarlet. When I do that, you must get involved in my case. Be a part of whatever assault team I'm on. When I die, you will steal my black box. What? Why? Here, let me call my handler and tell him about your filthy habit. The Yervesh leaned forward, waving his hands. No, wait. I don't care why. I'll do it. Good. What's the name of the CI? Scarlet. Good man. He slapped the Yervesh's shoulder, grinning as the detective had to move with the blow. Then he turned, walking out, and finding himself a lift as he pushed the button for the basement. He was quickly down in the basement of the HQ, moving through the morgue. The Xenos generally did not like dead bodies. Even fewer were all right with working in the same room as On, and a very, very select few were okay with operating on them constantly. As he pushed open a door, he found one of those Xenos he was looking for. Kira was something straight out of a sci-fi horror film in his mind. He couldn't tell if he thought of her as more of a space spider or space octopus, but either way she had way too many tentacle limb things, hung from the ceiling, and had a much too smooth face with no nose, and mandibles before a mouth filled to the brim with teeth. To top it all off, she was mostly dark purple, aside from that mockery of a white coat she wore to be professional. She turned as she heard the door open and smiled wide, skittering across the ceiling to approach him, a wide smile spreading across her face. Creature 88! What an unexpected surprise! She dropped her torso, curling her head at what should be an impossible angle to look at him face to face. Whatever brings you to my domain? As she spoke, she circled around him. I don't have any bodies for you to examine. As usual, your remains were shipped away somewhere I'm not allowed to know about. The thugs you killed in that raid were all unimportant. I've already checked. She hissed a little at the end. What were you looking for, pieces of me stuck under their nails? Hoping to find a hidden morsel? Why, Creature 88? Whatever are you? Cut the crap, Kira. I know how bad you want to taste me. You've tasted everything but the forbidden, classified, and undocumented Creature 88. Her lips and mandibles quivered for a moment. I assure you I have no idea. I said cut the crap. They aren't going to check my memories today, you can admit to it. Vincent growled back. Yes, I want to feast upon your flesh. I've tasted everything that's passed through this morgue. I've had everything you can possibly name or think of, but not you. Oh, but your smell. The few times when I'm allowed to examine your body, even with everything watching me, preventing me from stealing just a bite. She hissed out, snapping her teeth next to his ear, but he didn't flinch. I must taste you. She was so consumed by her desire she hadn't even asked what he wanted. I'll give you a taste, he offered. What? Her 4 eyes dilated. Not right now. Soon I'll call you before I'm about to die in a way where they'll likely let you work on me. When I call you, if I mention my kidney and some fava beans, you are to replace my black box with one I will have given you previously. Then I'll sneak you a small part of me. We both know how close an eye the hierarchy keeps on my remains, but if I give you some and then die very messily, they likely won't notice a little missing. She hissed out and licked her lips. What about a little taste right now? She leaned forward, clawed hands moving towards him, but he just slapped her across the face with all his strength, which knocked her head to the side, startling her enough that she dropped from the ceiling in a heap to the floor. She hissed and turned, skittering back upright before retreating from him. There's your taste, he answered with a sneer. She had some blood dripping from the corner of her mouth, and she licked up the green liquid before smiling. Even what little follicles you left on my flesh were delicious. It's a deal. He shook his head then and turned to leave. I don't know what you are, Creature 88, but I will soon know how you taste. He just shook his head and walked back to the lift. As he ascended, he heard a beep and pulled out his pager. Why they didn't have cell phones he really didn't understand. But soon he was back in the main lobby and turned on a screen. Yes, handler? Cav glanced past Vincent to see his background. At the HQ? Checking up on some things? I found you a counselor. Or, I think I have. You think you have? I was asking my superiors and I was given a contact, but, well, it's not one I recognize. Maybe it's one you weren't cleared to know about? He could see Cav frown at the idea, but obviously it was possible despite his status. It would appear so. Either way, here is the address. You're expected. Vincent frowned as he looked at it. Sector 1? What kind of counselor has an office in Sector 1? That's what I mean. I might not like you, Creature 88, but I strongly urge you caution. You're starting to delve into the realm of politics that my superiors live and breathe. The sorts of people who live up there could be powerful enemies indeed if you slight them. Are you warning me for my sake, or the sake of this project? Both. That was the most concern he'd ever seen from his Yurvesh handler. I'll be careful, handler. Creature 88 out. He turned off the screen and walked outside. A counselor in Sector 1? First that black human hand and the second memory box? Now this? What the fuck had he gotten himself into?